Welcome to Let's Get Creative with Sam, the podcast. I'm Sam Rawlings and I'm a children's creative counsellor. That means I help kids unlock their imaginations and explore the amazing world of creativity. But being creative can also be a great way to take care of our minds and feelings, which is super important. In this podcast, we'll be doing all sorts of fun things. We'll be sharing creative tips and tricks that can help us feel good, interviewing other awesome creative folks in the industry who use creativity for mental well-being, and maybe even doing some creative challenges together that can help us express ourselves. So buckle up, get ready to unleash your creativity and explore how it can help us feel our best, and let's have some fun. Good morning and welcome to another episode of Let's Get Creative with Sam. I'm Sam Rawlings and I'm a children's creative counsellor, and I support children 6 to 19 through different ways. I love being creative. I love colours, and I'm a mum, a grandma and an author. And today I have an amazing guest. I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this, but you'll become more aware of that as we're talking. So I'm going to introduce Catherine. Hi, Catherine. Morning.
Good morning, Sam. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Is this okay to say that this is also your first podcast as well?
Absolutely. It's fine to say. Do you know, growth is a really big part of what I do, Sam, and my audience will know that I don't talk about pushing through. I talk about moving through, and this is a really important part of my own growth, is moving through new things safely and comfortably. So yes, I'm thrilled and delighted to be here with you today.
And I feel pretty humbled and a little bit honoured as well for when you said yes. So I just want to bring in just the brief conversation we had before we came on about the importance of balance and how you felt not quite balanced, that preparation this morning.
Yes, absolutely. Now I do people, I do feelings, I do bodies. One of the things that I'm not au fait with is tech. Tech is something that I have a love-hate relationship. I think it's incredible for moving things forward and supporting, but it's not always my friend, and my nervous system feels it.
And that's a really interesting comment to hear, because I feel it's time for you to introduce yourself, so that'll help my listeners know what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a somatic stress and trauma informed coach, educator and mentor. I work in self-leadership. I work with the body, I work with the nervous system, I work with feelings, and that's all driven by my somatic approach. So I have had lived experience. I've had my own journey through complex PTSD, and I've navigated a challenging life through exponential grief and loss. And from a very young age, I knew that I felt things deeply. And I have spent most of my life being confused about my feelings and about how I fitted into the world. So initially, like you, I trained in counselling. I did my qualifications in counselling. And as I started to move through that, I realised that counselling wasn't quite getting to where my body was experiencing. And that was through things that were happening in my life at the time. I moved more into, body work, stress and trauma, and how it impacts how we show up, how we turn up. And so through doing that work and my energetic and spiritual work, I moved into somatics, which I felt like everything had come together. I felt like this was the place that I was meant to be. And So I've integrated, I work with business leaders, I work with CEOs, I work with their teams. So there's sort of two sides really to the work that I do. One is very personal, it's interpersonal, it's working with individuals, with their experiences, with their body. And then the other side of my business, having worked in global corporate sales for 10 years and then into business consultancy, I also work in the commercial sector too. So so there's sort of two areas of my business, but somatics it's like the golden thread between everything that I do, and it's really where my passion lies.
I love that. You've been on a real journey, but for people who are listening and don't know what somatics, can you explain it a little bit more, Catherine?
I can, and it's a really interesting question because many people will have different experiences and understanding of what somatics is. And so somatics is essentially the mind-body connection. Okay, so the top and the head connection. So if I explain that we think and we know with our head, cognitively, we think and we know with our head. And many people think that our thoughts are our feelings, but we actually feel in our body. And so when we have thinking and knowing that is in conflict with a feeling, our mind body is disconnected. And so the somatic work that I do, it's very person-centered, it's very energy-centered, and we work very safely. The work that I do is slow. You'll notice now that I'm changing my tone and I'm changing my voice in order to really bring together the mind-body connection. I notice what I'm feeling in my body. And because my somatic approach, my mind and my body is very connected, I move through a journey with my own body. If my body says, no, Sam, we're not doing it. And that's how I work with my clients, is supporting them to reconnect the mind with the body. And even when we talk about business owners and business leaders, supporting them to operate their business from an aligned place where they are in balance and connected and from true self. And so the stress and the trauma is integrated into the somatic work. So I integrate a number of different modalities into the somatic work to support people along navigating that journey from a body and mind perspective, but most importantly, autonomously and safely.
I love that. And I can resonate with some of that as a children's counsellor, because like you said about, that people think that feelings is in your thoughts, and not in the work that I do, because, working with children, they find it really hard to express what's going on for them to start with. So using creativity helps almost open that door and feel more calmer and feel safe. But then some of the work that I do as well is about connecting those feelings in the body as well, so that they're able to understand and increase their own awareness of actually what is going on for me. I'm feeling sick all the time. I don't want to go to school. My head hurts. My tummy hurts. So I can resonate in some way of what you're saying. And I just want to bring it back to, again, the pre-chat this morning, that you, one of the things I heard you say, and it feels really key, is that if you don't feel safe in your body, you're not going to do it. And I sensed when we were talking earlier that you were very close to like, I'm not doing this because there was something going on in your body. Can you explain a little bit about that? Obviously in your own, keeping your own self safe as well.
Yes, thank you, Sam. And it's key to understand that, our body operates from a nervous system perspective, and that term is thrown about, on the social media and the internet. It is thrown about all over the place. And, because people think that they've heard about the nervous system, that they can do a little bit of research and then they can move into supporting their clients safely. And what I would say to that is, I noticed what my body was experiencing. I'm very attuned to my body. And so I know that tech allows tech creates a sense of dysregulation in my nervous system. It says to my nervous system, speaks to me and says to me, this is not safe, I'm not comfortable, because it wasn't right, it didn't feel right. I'm in my space, you know, and I normally work on Zoom and we're on Google Meet, so this feels different. So I have to work with my body to allow it to adjust and navigate safely, you know, so I'm attuned to what's happening. And I always, in the work that I do, I always start from a place of safety. It supports the body to come back to a place of, you know, reset, recharge. If something's off, bring it back to safety, and then let's try again, you know, always bringing it back. So through you and I navigating the different settings on Google Meet, it allowed my body to become familiar with the space, the new space that I was in. And so, you know, just within a few minutes, I was able to work with my body and just feel into this new environment. And this is why somatics is so beautiful, through conscious awareness. And conscious awareness is really important, because if we don't know what we're working with, we can't somatically express, we can't safely express, we can't allow it to move through the body because we don't know what we're working with. So this morning I was very aware with what I was working with, so we just slowed everything down in order for me to become familiar with the space in which we're working.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important for listeners to hear the difference, that because of all the work you've done on yourself through somatics and understanding yourself, it's so important, isn't it, to understand ourselves. And I'm on my own journey of, like, you know, self-discovery and that real kind of self-worth, I'd say, as well, from where I started to where I am now. However, I always feel that there's more. You never come to it. I mean, and you'll know about this yourself, like, what's your thoughts on self-actualization?
My thoughts on self-actualization is we're consistently on a journey, like you just said, of self-discovery. And self-actualization is very much connected to the work that I do, you know, through our work in counselling. You know, we're working towards, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about, you know, that goal of self-actualization. And whilst I really love the theory behind this hierarchy of needs, operating from a place of self-leadership, being present, is key for me, because I always say to clients, you know, they can get overwhelmed, they can get burnt out with dealing with the goal. And self-actualization, in the context that we're talking about, would be the goal.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about, you know, getting to the goal of, you know, when will this feel better? When will I get to a place where I don't have to think and feel like this anymore? You know, that goal. And so somatics and the work that I do is supporting self-leadership of every stage of that journey. Every layer that we uncover is moving into and moving towards that place of self-actualization, to operate from autonomy, you know, to wholly accept the version that we are without codependency, without the need for others' approval, really operating from a place of, I'm comfortable with myself, I accept myself, I am beautiful and perfect just the way that I am, without ego, through authenticity.
Yeah.
So my thoughts on self-actualization are very much, yes, let's be aware of the goal of where we want to be going, but let's be very present and not self-abandon in order to reach that place. And let's just place the ego to the side and allow authenticity and autonomy to lead the self-leadership journey.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense as well, that we do. It kind of brings me to mindfulness and the real power of the now.
Absolutely. Being present is key to connecting with your body. deeply, because if the body doesn't feel safe, and I want to point out here, Sam, and this is really important, that actually being safe, physically being safe, is very different to a perception of feeling and being safe. This is where we start talking about how the nervous system integrates into somatics, because being safe is not the same, you know, really allowing the body to experience safety. And not everybody is able to articulate that they don't feel safe in their body because they've never felt safe in their body.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the clients that I work with, particularly young people, they find it really difficult to recognize that safety, and then it can bring those, like, you know, that really high anxiety and a lot of avoidance. And a lot of that is around school as well, because an environment like school, if you think about primary school to high school and the difference, you know, and it's almost like you feel like this little fish in this huge sea. Safety just doesn't seem to be apparent for a lot of young people. So then they're almost searching for a place where they feel safe. And it's really important that I allow that in my counselling space for them to have that. And trust is so important. So what part of that is key, about connecting safety, trust with safety, especially around relationships and environments. Would you agree?
Sam, this is I have a really real passion and a soft spot for somatics and safety through education. Through, you know, exploring my own journey, one of the things that I didn't realize until I embarked on understanding stress and trauma was how my body had experienced stress through the education system. You know, I went through that in the 80s,
Yeah,
which is very different to how it is now. But even when we talk about that, the body experience doesn't matter whether it was, you know, the education system 30 years ago or in 30 years time, you know, the body experiences. And because my nervous system was consistently on hypervigilance, I didn't do very well at school at all, because my body was on hypervigilance. So my brain wasn't able to absorb the information. You know, one of the worst things that you can do is tell a child to sit down and shut up, because if they've got dysregulated energy in their body actually needs to move. And children are they're like sponges. They absorb everything in the environment. And being consciously aware, supporting, you know, your children, little ones, you know, teenagers, to be calm. You know, when they come out of school, they're like this, and it's because for the whole of the day they've been suppressed. Their energy has been suppressed. They're being almost, well, unable to express themselves as a whole human. So the education, supporting children, is a real passion of mine. I have a community interest company that is working with supporting through the education system and bringing somatics and nervous system education into schools, colleges, universities, to support in order to bring this awareness to how the body needs to be experiencing this environment.
That's just one of those moments just made me kind of sit back. Obviously, reflect a little bit on my own school years and things, but I'm also conscious that this is not about me today. This is, you know, about you. So not going down some kind of, like, you know, wild goose chase, you know, letting my brain take the better of me. Absolutely not. And I know how to hold my boundaries, especially when I'm speaking to people. So but just that you're able to offer that support to schools who haven't got that understanding, you know, because not going on my soapbox, but I feel that the education system is really outdated. And, you know, it's becoming more apparent, isn't it, that, like, even when we were in school, you know, that it was still a really difficult time. So it's so much work that needs doing to get to the level to be able to support children, now. So you being able to do that in your way through your CIC, you know, it's just incredible. And it's one of those for me. And I have them, and sometimes I'll go, wow. Well, I decided not to do that right then, maybe afterwards. But it's just one of those moments. It's like, yeah, the people like you are the people that really matter to help our families really kind of, you know, today's families just be able to understand what's going on so much more. And the connection to the body is crucial, absolutely crucial. So I just want to share that because that feels really important of the work that you're doing.
I think it's really, sorry, so I think it's really important to mention there as well, you know, for your listeners that, you know, we talked about being present, and this is very much about the brain-body connection. If the brain isn't online, what we call online, if it's not working from the prefrontal cortex, yeah, because it's dysregulated, it's not able, the brain isn't able to take in the information. And this is something that's really key in education, is that, you know, whether it's primary school, secondary school, you know, college or university, if something is happening in your life that prevents your body from feeling safe, then your brain, and it's not a person thing, it's a physiological imperative that your brain is online in order to take information, which means that safety in the body is critical. It's a critical part of your educational experience for what you're consuming. So, you know, if you're in an environment that's nurtured, that feels safe, that feels soft, your chances of success at taking information are much greater than if you are experiencing stress, whether in or out of, you know, home or education. It's really imperative.
Yeah. And that seems more important in some ways than talking therapy.
Absolutely, because, you know, talking therapy is absolutely beautiful for being seen and heard. You know, that is a critical part of working through stress and trauma. Absolutely. You know, people need to feel seen and heard. But as we've talked about, you know, the talking therapy, because that's the top, it will only take us so far.
Yeah, definitely. That's where creativity comes in, isn't it? Would you say?
100%. The work that you do is phenomenal for children because creativity allows the body and the mind to come back to the moment. And creativity with counselling, goodness me, Sam, you're onto a winner, especially with children. And I know how brilliant at your work you are.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I am really passionate about it, and I do love it. And I think the more I do it, the more I understand myself, you know, and my confidence increases. I'm able to reach out to so many more families, but also that real deeper work, which is so important, because then that's when we can kind of come away from just the mind, because obviously that is how, you know, the clients come into the room. They're looking for that safety, like we talked about. So being able to connect to the body is really important. And speaking to you, you're just kind of saying what I could say I already know, but I don't. But do you know what I mean? That I'm already doing in some ways. And that it's that reassurance again for the listeners that actually creativity just brings in so much more. And it does bring you to this real kind of present moment instead of letting your mind just rush away, where it just becomes where you just don't know what's going on whatsoever. So coming back to when you were younger, you've talked briefly about, you know, your own trauma that you've experienced, particular how you felt in school. Would you say that gives us those kind of tools to be able to find who we actually are?
Absolutely, Sam. And you've just pointed out, you know, that's a really valid point there, because childhood experiences, I talk a lot in the work that I do about conscious awareness. And, you know, when we're younger, we're just going about our everyday life. We're doing the things that we should be doing. We're doing the things that society says that we should be doing. And, you know, I'm an empath, you know, so I absorb energy that's around me. And until I knew that I was an empath and a highly sensitive person, which then became very validating for me. I was basically just drifting through life. I was doing all of the things that I thought I should be doing. I grew up in a very loving household, you know, with beautiful morals, values, you know, manners, boundaries. But I didn't always feel safe. And that wasn't because of anything that happened in my family environment. It was because of my experiences of the whole of my environment. And I've, you know, I talked with my mum, my parents, about, you know, my childhood. And so we don't need to have had rubbish experiences when we're a child to have experienced stress or trauma. But what's key is really doing that self-discovery of what we were feeling in that moment, you know, those memories that are really vivid about what happened. You know, I often hear people talk about them and they're taking, you know, their mind's gone back to the place and the body's feeling, you know, it's saying, don't go there, don't go there. But the voice is like, I love this validation, I'm being seen and I'm being heard. And that's what I experienced for a lot of my years. And I notice in my body now upon reflection that I spent a lot of time self-shaming, a lot of time, you know, thinking I didn't fit in, thinking that I wasn't part of something, I didn't belong. And belonging is a really important part of the human experience. It's really, you know, the body needs to feel that it belongs. And so at various points, you know, when I look at situationships or relationships, you know, that I can now identify that, you know, some of them were external influences, but a lot of them were about my internal experience. You know, I'm a recovered people pleaser. You know, people pleasing was one of my behaviors, you know, which I did to ensure that my body felt safe. Being codependent, I used to be extremely codependent and hold on to things. And so when we're, you know, when we're able to notice these behaviors and the feelings that go with them, we can connect the two and then allow them to safely integrate in order to move forward. I feel like I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, and I can't remember what the question was that you asked.
No, not at all. It was about childhood, like, you know, molding the who you are now. And obviously, because we've spoken before, I'm aware that, you know, you're neurodivergent. Are you happy to share a little bit about that, Catherine?
Absolutely, because I think the neurodivergence is, I was talking to, this was really interesting, but I was talking to a doctor from Lincoln University, and we were talking about neurodivergence, and he introduced me to the term acquired neurodivergence, and it's a lot to do with you know, the biological imperatives that happen within the body. But I didn't discover that I was neurodivergent until I was 50. I'm 53 this year. So I've spent also, you know, the last few years integrating neurodivergence through my own training and my own experiences. And it supports me to really hold safe space, because neurodivergence and trauma are very closely connected. There's a lot of research that is coming out now around, you know, the sensitivity in the autonomic parasympathetic nervous system, you know, and how that moves from the fight flight to the rest and digest, how the body works. So yes, it's been interesting navigating, you know, sort of bringing in somatics and then adding in, integrating the neurodivergence awareness and education that I've acquired, that supported me and my family, and those that I work with. I don't have an official diagnosis, but I know that I have, you know, ADHD, autistic traits, and I'm learning new ones are coming up all the time. You know, one of the things, you know, I have pathologic demand avoidance, PDA, you know, people will know it's PDA, but demand avoidance, when I feel pressure on me, you know, my nervous system is activated, you know, into the fight or flight response. It's like, get out of here. But now I learn to sit with it and get curious about, what does that mean? Rejection sensitivity is another one. And I think it's key for people to understand that these traits of, you know, they're not bad and they're not good. They just as they are. They're part of who we are. And sensitivity is a gift. Sensitivity is a gift. We find it challenging in today's society because everything is moving very quickly.
Yeah.
And for those of us that are highly sensitive, neurodivergent, experience stress and trauma, it's really important that we pull ourselves back, that we allow ourselves the time to just safely connect with ourselves, and just be still in order to gain the correct perspective for ourselves, for our own validation, see and hear ourselves, for what we said about, you know, self-actualization.
Thank you for sharing, you know, that part of you that it's almost like that was being hidden for so long, and now you know who you are. I mean, it's been mentioned to me several times that I've probably got ADHD, and I have kind of looked into it a little bit, you know, with my own family and the kind of experiences, particularly through childhood. And I kind of do believe it. However, similar to you, I don't feel that I need a diagnosis at the moment. The work that I do, it's very apparent, you know, when I'm working with clients, the families that come through to me. But it's also, it feels empowering to be able to go, yeah, actually, Sam. And a lot of the work I do is like looking in that mirror, you know, for the client, but also when I step away, because it's important, like I said, about keeping boundaries for, you know, this is not me, this is the client. But when I step away from that, and I'm a huge reflector, used to see it as overthinking, but now I see it as that real reflection. And it is, you know, then I recognize those traits in myself and I'm like, yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. Look at who you are now. I mean, just sat here wearing yellow. It always used to be dark and dismal colours. And then it was like, so much changed, and it, you know, and I really hold that change as well in myself. And talking to you this morning, Catherine, has also helps me feel calm and safe. And, you know, and I think that's really important as well, because sometimes, depending on people's energies, we can feel wired, can't we? And completely the opposite.
I really love that you've brought this up, Sam, because, you know, doing so much somatic work, I'm very aware of energy that I'm drawn to. You know, I do spiritual and energetic work too. And yellow is a color that I'm really drawn to. You may recall that I said about, you know, I've experienced in my life exponential loss and grief. And yellow is a very, very powerful color for me, based on a very special loss that I had. And your energy, I've always felt, you know, we've known each other for some time, you know, we've worked, you know, we've been in similar circles, and we've had, you know, our chats, and I've always felt very safe with you because of your energy and your authenticity. And the color yellow has, you know, sort of drew me in too through safety, and I was very aware of that from the first time that we met.
Yeah.
And so when we really have that beautiful somatic awareness, we really draw ourselves to authentic connection. We really draw ourselves to authentic connection, and it's very powerful. You know, you're very connected to yourself and the work that you do. And I suppose I just wanted to share that the somatic experience that I have with you is very connecting, very safe.
Thank you. I have got goosebumps just because when you were talking about it, it was, yeah. And it's funny, isn't it? Our colour can be so powerful and be so meaningful.
Wow. Our senses, the body senses. Now, going back to somatic work, people have different understandings, and somatics can mean lots of different things to lots of different people. And sensory experience is extremely important for the body and somatic work. Because when we connect with all of our sensory experiences, and you mentioned before about mindfulness, but being present and allowing ourselves to notice what our sensory experiences are communicating to us is beautiful and so important as we move through a journey of self-discovery, growth, healing, conscious awareness. Absolutely, you know, even just really sitting down with ourselves and thinking, you know, what do I want this to look like? What do I want this to feel like? How would I like others to experience me? You know, that whole conscious awareness of self-leadership.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess leadership always meant something different to me. I always saw it as the hierarchy, and I was not at that level. I was right at the bottom of the pile. And it's really interesting hearing about self-leadership, because it's the word, isn't it? Self. You know, we talk about self-worth, self-confidence, self-esteem, you know, and putting self in front of leadership, it really changes the meaning of and your own expectations as well.
Sam, you know, doing it's been very important part of my own journey, and which is why I always put, when I talk about self-leadership and articulate it, it's always with capital letters. Self is always with capital letters, because we must lead from a place of self. When we start leading from a place of ego, when we start leading from a place of, you know, stress and trauma or experiences, or not feeling safe, or from fight, flight and anxiety, you know, we're self-abandoning. And being aware of that is that, where am I self-abandoning to prevent self-leadership? And having worked, like you said, in corporates, like you say, there's a hierarchy, you know, leadership is from the top. Well, actually, self-leadership is everybody.
Yeah.
We all are aspiring to operate from internal self leadership.
Yeah. 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 It is really important. It is, you know, and I think a lot more words should have self in front of them. That I'm just changing the dictionary, really. I would, although I'm going could, would and should here. What is that all about? Is what you talked about earlier. I can change the dictionary. I can change the dictionary for like myself, the families that I work with. I think that's where it's about, you know, it's that one step at a time, making those changes. What a beautiful conversation with you today, Catherine, just hearing your journey and how you're, you know, the inspiration that you can share with others. And it's obviously your clients, but it's wide as well, because like you said, you're supporting schools and education and colleges and universities. And I think that's the start, isn't it? Starting right at the younger age. And that's why I work with children as well, to make that change, for them to be heard and listened to feel safe, to have that trust. So yeah, in some ways I feel we don't do the same, but in some ways there's some kind of connection in the work that we do.
Yeah.
So you coming on today and talking to me is it's just so beautiful to hear. So we come to that part of the podcast where I ask you for your 3 tips. I have to say it like that, because otherwise it comes out another way.
Bless you. So I think my 3 tips, based on, you know, the work that I do, the audience that you have, sorry, is, first of all, kindness and compassion. Kindness and compassion for self supports safety. When we really slow everything down to having kindness and compassion for ourselves first, it really supports the opportunities to be kind and compassionate with those around us. And not everybody understands what kindness and compassion feels like. And when we really ask our body to slow down, just noticing any resistance to kindness and compassion, whether we offer it to ourselves or allow ourselves to have it from others. The second tip would be conscious awareness. Absolutely conscious awareness. When we understand our thoughts, emotions, and responses, we can move through anything safely. But through conscious awareness, we ask for safe spaces. We ask from a place of choice rather than from a response. And the third one is always, I'm involved with a charity with this name, is hope. Always holding on to hope. So, if something is possible, it's possible for you. And having had my own journey through complex PTSD and now allowing myself to lead a life that is generated from hope and healing through education and safe support, absolutely, if anything's possible, it's possible for you. And my experience is proof of that.
Absolutely. You're a walking proof. A walking part of proof, absolutely. I just want to mention, as well as they are wonderful tips, and definitely recommend that. I'm having a bit of a brain moment that's just kind of gone. So I will just go back to that in a minute. When you said about the charity that you're working with, collaboration that I was in was called Holding On to Hope. And it's so powerful, isn't it? Something like that. What is the charity about, Catherine?
So the charity is called Don't Lose Hope. And I've been chair of trustees for the charity for coming up 8 years. And we deliver counselling sessions free and low cost within our local community. And so there's 3 areas of the charity. So the cafe, which supports the counsellors. I think we have just near on 30 counsellors. So you it's on a sliding scale based on income. So and I offer this, not this, but I promote this in also the work that I do. I don't believe that anybody should be left out, due to financial situations. Everybody deserves a right to hope and healing. So we have a cafe, and the profits from the cafe support the counselling. We have some incredible counsellors, and we also have a very, very successful community garden that is it supports the community, does lots and lots of different workshops, and holds safe man space as well. That's another sort of area of passion: men's mental health and mind well-being. But I think we've delivered way over 100,000 counselling sessions.
That's incredible.
Since we incorporated. I'm very proud of the work that what we do together as a team.
That's amazing, and it shows, doesn't it, when that support is there. And like you say, there's no ensuring that everybody is able to reach and access that support if it's needed, obviously within the area that you are, but that makes a difference, and it takes that stigma away, doesn't it, which is huge, especially when looking at healing yourself. Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so you do so many different things. I mean, I've seen you travel up to London and all over the place. Where would you say you want to be, say, 5 years' time?
My goodness, that's a question, Sam.
That we haven't talked about.
Yeah, we haven't even touched on this. So I have my passion. I was talking to somebody about this last night, and talking about doing some local community work, bringing some trauma-informed education into my own community. As I said, I have I'm founder of Roots and Wings Community Interest Company, and my vision for 5 years' time is to be able to support and educate as many people, as many humans as possible, to feel safe in their body through community funded work. I was in a position where at one time where I couldn't afford the access and support that I needed. So my work is driven very much by personal experience. And so that always drives me to fulfilling my work. I'm very, very grateful for the conscious awareness that I've had to allow my experience to support me in my passion-led success. I'm very passion-driven, and yeah, I really would like to be able to navigate those two areas, to be operating, to delivering education, and support for growth and healing. It's in my family lineage that my mum family were farmers, so you know, from the growth perspective, my dad's family were very well respected pharmacists for, well, the early 1800s in my local area. So the healing comes in. So, you know, I feel like I've naturally come onto this path through my own heritage. And I feel like I'm living my purpose, Sam. You know, I'm not one of these people that, you know, aspires to be a millionaire sitting on a beach on a yacht. You know, I want to wake up every day with a feeling.
Yes. But what a wonderful way to end today's conversation. Yeah, it's been so beautiful. Thank you for coming on today and really talking. Your passion just seeps through so much, and like I said, it creates that extra layer of calmness in me as well. So yeah, so beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody who has joined me today with my wonderful guest Catherine, and it's just been amazing. That is it for today. I will be back with another guest soon. So enjoy your day. Notice what your body is doing, maybe more than your mind, and just breathe it in. See you later. Bye.